Hi guys, I'm back with chapter 5 today of Flat Stanley. So chapter 5 is all about down the river. So I wonder what's going to happen. This is kind of a long one, so let's get started. The lamb chops followed the sun westward across the savannah, as Captain Tony had instructed. Soon more and more trees sprung up around them, and they came to a river. They walked along the muddy bank. The sun was high in the sky. Drops of sweat ran from Stanley's forehead down his body. Are we there yet? Arthur asked for what seemed like the millionth time. No, Arthur, Mr. Lambchop said in a weary voice. They kept walking. Their shoes made sucking sounds as they stepped in and out of the mud. Suddenly, there was a low growling, and Stanley froze in fear. Arthur looked at his stomach. I'm hungry, he whined. Look at that, said Mr. Lambchop, pointing towards the bank. It was a canoe pulled up on the shore. The Lambchops found a paddle inside. Mr. Lambchop scanned the area. Stanley, exactly how far downriver did Captain Tony say to go? Mr. Lambchop asked. A few hours, replied Stanley. On foot or by boat? Stanley realized that he didn't know. My feet hurt, grumbled Arthur, and I have mud in my socks. Whose canoe do you think that is? Stanley asked his father. Mr. Lambchop shrugged. I don't know. Perhaps the owners went hunting. Meanwhile, Arthur climbed into the canoe. Ah, he said, putting his feet up on the seat. Arthur, Lambchop, Mr. Lambchop said sternly, you are stealing someone else's canoe. No, Arthur rolled his eyes. I'm sitting in someone else's canoe. Would it be stealing if we borrowed it and brought it right back? Stanley suggested. Mr. Lambchop looked at Stanley. Yes, it would, he said. There was a rustling in the brush nearby. Onto the bank stepped a very tall man with enormous holes in his earlobes. His body was draped in a red cloth, and in his hands was a staff taller than Stanley. He stopped short when he saw the Lambchop. Arthur, Mr. Lambchop whispered out of the side of his mouth. Arthur nearly jumped out of his skin when he saw the tribesman. Wonder if that's who the canoe belongs to. Behind the man, a woman who swathed in red appeared. She held a baby wrapped in patterned cloth close to her body. The man squinted at the Lambchop. Then he turned and fixed his gaze on Stanley. He came closer. Stanley flinched as the man leaned closer and peered behind Stanley's head. He looked at Stanley right in the eye. What happened to you? The man asked. I was flattened by my own bulletin board, Stanley answered. You speak English? sputtered Mr. Lambchop. And French, too, the man said. I'm a man of the Maasai tribe, but I'm also a graduate of the Sorbonne in Paris. This land is our home. And you, young man, he continued, turning to Arthur, what do you think you're doing in our canoe? Don't be so hard on him, the woman said. He's just a boy. They are clearly lost. The boy squealed with delight at the sight of Stanley. Mr. Lambchop rummaged through his pocket and came up with a newspaper clipping. We're trying to get to the spot marked with the X. The man and woman studied the article. Many believe that the first people lived in Africa, said the man, and then walked on to other continents long, long ago, when all parts of the world were close together and had not yet drifted apart. Today, many people come seeking the place they began. He turned to Stanley. Is this why you have come? I guess so, said Stanley. The man turned to Mr. Lambchop. This is only a few hours downriver. Would you like to borrow our canoe? That would be very generous, said Mr. Lambchop. Thank you. So the tribesmen are letting the Lambchops use their canoe. Stanley, Arthur, and Mr. Lambchop waved goodbye to the family as they pulled away from the shore. Soon they were in the center of the river. A giant hippopotamus eyed them suspiciously, with only the top of its head and the enormous nostrils visible above the surface. There's the hippo. Stanley and Arthur had both wanted to paddle, and finally Mr. Lambchop agreed to let Stanley have the first turn. Canoeing was much harder than Stanley expected. The canoe kept drifting towards the shore. Straighten out, Stanley, Arthur complained, and then Stanley had to work extra hard just to keep the boat facing forward. Let me try, Arthur snapped. I just started, said Stanley. Well, said Arthur, now it's time to finish. No, said Stanley. Boys, groaned Mr. Lambchop. He's taking forever, complained Arthur, grabbing the paddle. Stop it, Arthur, said Stanley, pulling it back. Let me have it. canoe and started splashing with his hands, trying to reach it. It was his fault. Arthur and Stanley yelled at each other. I don't care whose fault it was, shouted Mr. Lambchop. Get that paddle. Arthur and Stanley plunged their hands into the water, tried to get the boat to move closer to the paddle, but it was too late. The current was carrying it down the river. As the canoe drifted aimlessly, Mr. Lambchop put his head in his hands. Arthur and Stanley both stared at their feet. Finally, Mr. Lambchop looked at his watch, shook his head, and sighed. Your mother's at a Grammar Society fundraiser right now. I'm sure her and her fellow grammarians would appreciate our predicament. Stanley and Arthur exchanged curious glances. Today we have discovered the origin of a common expression in the English language. We are, as they say, up a creek without a paddle. Mr. Lambchop's lips curled into a smile. Arthur and Stanley started to giggle. When their laughter died down, Mr. Lambchop looked at them earnestly. I expect you two to pay for that paddle out of your allowance, he said. We gave that family our word that we would return their canoe as we found it. Do you understand? Yes, said Stanley. We are Lambchop men in deepest of Africa, said Mr. Lambchop. We must work together. A minute later, Stanley's shoes and socks lay on the floor of the canoe. With one hand on Stanley's head and another on his leg, his father pulled Stanley's legs through the water. Using Stanley as the paddle, the Lambchops made their way down river. So there they are. They're using Stanley as the paddle now. And that is the end of chapter 5. So next time we will read chapter 6. Why don't you make a prediction? Where do you think they're going? Do you think they're going to get to the flat school when they get down the